And now, the moment you've all been waiting for. You're tuned in to Tapped Out. Hosted by Brendan Tobin and Sean Levine. Only on the BetQL network.
The segment is called You Gonna Fight Me, where two men fight on the radio. He's Brendan Tobin. I'm the sports machine, Sean Levine. And after that 10-8 you just put on producer Jake, honestly, I'm a you nervous. I'm not going to lie. So
you can't say silly things. I mean, I love that Jake is getting into boxing tonight. That's awesome. Because that is the great thing about this is like, I do like the fact that people who aren't that into boxing are into, but like, he's like, oh, I think this is just as big as Pacquiao Mayweather. I'm like, come on. It's not
okay, let me defend my guy a little bit. First of all, that's ridiculous.
Don't defend. Why are you defending things?
It's ridiculous.
I'll hear you guys out. I was just upset with you guys saying it was all right. Fine.
Let me try. And then you can tell me I'm an idiot too. Pacquiao Mayweather would have been the biggest fight since, like, I don't know, Ali was fighting or Foreman, like way back in the day. Had it happened when it was supposed to, when it happened, and not just the way that it played out in hindsight, where it was a boring fight, but it happened 4 years, 5 years,
which is
after
exactly what you're doing.
All I'm saying is that we never get this. So this is cool. Jake's ridiculous with that take, but it is cool that we're getting both these guys, because the truth is, I don't know that we know that you know. You know more about boxing than anybody that I know. But I don't think that even you know if Ryan Garcia or Tank Davis has hit their prime yet. Is that fair to say?
I think Gervonta's in his prime. I think that Ryan's the bigger mystery here. How good is Ryan Garcia going to be? That's the big question.
Yes.
If you're saying, yeah, it's great we're getting this at a better time than we got Pacquiao and Mayweather, I could agree with that. But even with you going with your Captain Hydes, it did 4 million pay-per-view buys at $100 a pop.
4 million? Oh, okay. All right. Jake, stop. That's on him, not me. You're going to fight me if I tell you Colby deserves the title shot versus Leon. A lot of people are upset about that. You know, I've always been a Colby guy. You know, I've said I thought Colby, since we've been doing the show for a couple of years, is a pound-for-pound top 10 fighter in the world. He just had his boogeyman in Kamaru Usman. And I get that he wasn't as active as some other guys, but there's an argument for and against all those guys. I think Colby deserves the shot. You going to fight me?
I'm not going to fight you. The only thing I had an issue with is I just felt like what would have been the difference in just announcing it right after 287? I mean, obviously, you know, now that we know Jorge Masvidal lost and looked the way that he did, okay, yeah, I'm fine with it. But not having that buzz for that potentially being a title fight, I thought just took a little bit something away from the fight. I'm okay with Colby getting the title shot, but listen, if I'm Bilal Muhammad, if I'm Gilbert Burns, and I'm out here, you know, if I'm Gilbert Burns, I'm fighting 3 times in a year. If I'm Bilal Muhammad, I have the resume I have the backstory with Leon too. I definitely see some of the arguments, but I'm okay with Colby getting the shot. I just think that it was weird they announced it when they did, just because he made weight.
And it brings up a really interesting question. What's next for Kamaru? What's next for Hamzat? Actually, coming up in our next segment, BT and I are going to play matchmaker, and we'll tell you what we think is next for those guys and a bunch of others. You mentioned the name Masvidal. He retired from the UFC. You're going to fight me if I say we definitely see him fight again. I'm not necessarily saying it's going to be in a cage or in a ring, but we're definitely going to see Masvidal fight again. You going to fight me?
Putting that caveat on it, I won't fight you. Like, if you're telling me Masvidal gets a chance to box, if he's the next guy to take on Jake Paul or something like that after Nate Diaz, yeah, I could definitely see that, especially with him having his own promotion. But do we see him in the UFC again? I don't know. I don't know what it would be. You know, I think, you know, the way that he lost these last ones, especially, I just thought the way that he couldn't react to punches the same way. He just looked like a guy pushing 40. And I think that it's good that he's getting out. I think it's great that he got to go out the way that he did. Even in a loss, he got to do it, bringing the sport back to his city, which is poetic in its own way. So I hope he doesn't step back in the UFC again, because I think he's already had a marvelous career. But yeah, with all these things being out, BKFC or, you know, boxing or something, I couldn't rule that out.
I see you're marvelous, and I raise you a memorable. Like, if you think about the most memorable careers of any UFC fighter, maybe top 5. I'm not saying best. Nobody would argue that. But if you just talk about memorable and the run that he had and the year that he had and the records that he holds and the hair and the street Judas and the beefs, like Masvidal is definitely going to go down as one of the more memorable fighters in the history of the UFC. Are you going to fight me? So John Anik said that Israel Adesanya is the best middleweight ever, which means he thinks he's better than Spider Silva. And I agree with him. You know, I've always been an Adesanya guy. He came on our show. Hell, I've got his picture right behind me if you're watching us on Twitch. I agree. I think Israel Adesanya is the best middleweight of all time. You going to fight me?
I'm not ready to do it yet. I still have Spider on top of him, but I would say that Stylebender is getting to the point where, you know, his arguments are getting pretty damn good. Like that, the way that he got that knockout against Pereira was one of the coolest things I've seen. You know, and especially, you know, you think about it, Sean, how many times have we done on this show? Like, you know, he's had such a fascinating career because he does fight a lot for a champion. He hasn't been in the UFC very long. I mean, like you think about like this guy kind of came onto it late and you know, just all the contenders that he's taken out and then took some heat of, oh, his fights were boring, people are walking out. So for him to have a knockout like that the way that he did was definitely, I think, one of those that cements him as like, all right, maybe he is going to get into the conversation. Because I just think with Anderson, it's just iconic moments, you know, between the late pull-out submissions of Chael, the front face knockout. Like
he kicked him in the face.
Yeah, so like it's like those are the things that's tough to replicate that, but he's definitely starting to put up that kind of a resume too, where he gets all these highlights on top of all the winning.
Does Izzy get any credit for, I don't know, beating him? I mean, most of the time, a good way to judge who's better is let him go out. No, I get you. Izzy was 31. I'm not sure how old Spider was at that time, like 67, 68. He was getting up there in age. So I'm with you. That's it sucks to watch the end of a career like Anderson Silva, who you've got as like who everybody has as a top 3 all-time best UFC fighter. And then you're like, the end was just so ugly, especially compared to the other guys that you might have on that list. That's another argument for another day. Yeah, Jake chimes in with BJ Penn. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And those guys, and I have those guys a level above, like, you know, the way Cowboy Cerrone went out, where it sucks to watch those guys lose 7 of 8 or 8 or 9. You're like, damn, but it's different when you're literally an all-time great in the case of Anderson Silva, and then you go out the way that he did. All right. You're going to fight me if I say there's been a lot of conversation about whoever wins this fight tonight, Tank Davis versus Ryan Garcia, is the face of boxing. You're going to fight me if I say there's only one face of the UFC. It's been that way for the last decade. It's going to be that way for the next decade at least. And his name is Conor McGregor. You going to fight me? Don't be silly. Leave that to Jake. You know I'm right. Who else, dude?
I mean, like, yeah, I guess it's a silly thing to fight, but, you know, I think that this has been a sport that's got a lot of great guys. I think that I've been surprised with how well I think the sport has carried on with Conor not really being an elite fighter for a long time. Like, it feels like we're in every week. Like, how many fights this year have we been pumped up about? You know, between Volkanovski and John Jones's return. And, you know, I just think that there is a lot of great talent. Like, certainly Conor gets, you know, a huge amount of credit for that, for making the sport even more global the way that it is. But, you know, I think that one day I guess the way I would fight is I think one day he could be supplanted by somebody because, you know, he's going to be one of those Mount Rushmore guys. But I think that you're seeing how crazy the sport has gotten popularity wise. And maybe he's one that could that somebody does overtake him one day.
It's such a fun argument because in the case of basketball, for example, Jordan is the most popular. He still sells the most shoes. Any sane fan would tell you that he's the best of all time, right? Like, there's not a whole lot of argument there. In our sport, especially at the highest level, the UFC, there's a difference between who's the best and who's the most popular and who sold the most. Like, I don't think anybody's going to argue that Conor McGregor is a top 3 or 4, maybe even top 10 best fighter of all time. But you also, on the flip side, can't argue that he is the most important. He is the most entertaining. He is the biggest cash cow.
For sure.
So it's tough when you like Conor McGregor's importance to the sport compared to his greatness as a fighter. I don't know. I don't want to take away from his greatness as a fighter because I do think that he is an incredible fighter. And when I start talking like this, it makes it sound like he's above average, not incredible, and he is.
Best featherweight of
He
all
is
time.
great. Now you just went like Jake, and you got a little bit too excited there.
I did
Brendan
not, dude. What are you talking?
You got a little too excited.
But see, here's the thing.
Don't do this again. Don't do this again.
Though. He knocked out Jose Aldo, not when Jose Aldo was old. He knocked out Jose Aldo in his prime. So
okay, here we go again.
Different.
Let's do the math. And
I don't
when
want
he
to do the
did,
argument again. I just want to mess with you.
Jose Aldo had defended his belt. Let me count. I need 2 hands, 8, 9 times. And so Conor took his belt and defended it a total of
0.
That's the number we were looking for. And he tells me that he's the best of all time. Okay. All right. Well, math was never my thing anyway.
Did go win another championship. You know, you kind of like
he did
race that fun.
And Jose Aldo was still doing his thing at a very high level.
I mean, I'm helping your argument.
I don't know
what you're lashing out at. I mean, I'm helping your argument. You're the one who's sitting here like, Conor McGregor, undisputed face of the UFC.
Because you're anti-Aldo.
I'm not anti-Aldo. It's not true.
I don't accept it. Look, you can do very few things to upset me, right? You can't really talk about my family. I won't let you talk about my dog, and don't talk about my Jose Aldo. Okay. All right. We cool? We good? All right.
Hall of Fame, dude. Just going to Hall of Fame. You gonna go? Go to Vegas.
Yeah,
go see him get inducted.
Oh, I thought you meant the draft in Kansas City. No, probably not going to make my way to Vegas for Jose Aldo.
Is the draft in Kansas City this year?
Dude, everything's in Kansas City. UFC was in Kansas City. The AFC Championship game was in Kansas City. The Super Bowl parade was in Kansas City. Let me get off my high horse. When it comes to the NFL draft, you can fight me if I say Anthony Richardson. You're down there in Florida. I think he's the steal of the draft.
By the way, I just want to say Jimmy Butler's on a heater right now from 3. Dude can't miss.
I knew you weren't watching the fights. You're watching basketball, aren't you? You're watching the Heat game. What's the score?
A big one tonight, 27-21 Heat. But Jimmy Butler's like turning into Ray Allen. It's crazy. He just keeps putting up threes.
Jim VP. All right. He didn't listen to me, but I do think that Anthony Richardson is the steal of the draft.
Do you really think that? Because because here's the thing, like as a Gator hater, it's like, I don't want to see him be successful, but he had such a short stint as like the Gators QB, and everybody's just saying this guy's an all-time athlete. So I really don't know how to like interpret that.
Where I'm sitting, he looks like kind of like Chet Holmgren in the NBA draft, where I wouldn't want to be the team that passes up on a guy like that. It feels like at the top of the draft, if you're a CJ Stroud guy or whoever, I'm not saying those guys are a dime a dozen. It's going to work for eventually for some of those guys, but Anthony Richardson's different. If it does work, you don't want to be one of those teams at the top that took a different quarterback. So I think he's going to be the steal of the draft. Speaking of basketball, since you went down that route, we do have Bucks and Heat tied at 1-1. You're going to fight me if I say, I don't think you're going to fight me on this one. I think the Heat got a chance. I think the Heat can win this series. You're going to fight me?
They're
up right now, right?
Well, first, I just want to say before the series, I picked them in 6, even before Giannis got hurt.
Standing ovation.
Thank you.
Good for you.
I did. I picked him in. So that's my team. I thought, first of all, everybody overreacted to the Game 2 loss. I knew 100%. Giannis. I knew the Bucks were going to shoot the lights out. Everybody knows
that was an ass
desperate
whooping.
team.
That was an ass.
Oh my God, it was terrible. It was good. It was over by halftime. They have to win tonight. I think if they win tonight, I think they definitely have a shot. If they don't, if you go down 2-1, 2 games fully without Giannis, that proves that you guys just weren't up to snuff. They've been such a weird team this year, dude. Like every time you think they're done, that's when they shine. Every time things look pretty for them, they poop the bed. So, I mean, some may call that the epitome of average. I don't know if I have a great argument for that, but I just trust Jimmy. I trust Jimmy Butler in the playoffs more than a lot of guys.
Jim VP, right? They're underachieving is the word that you're looking for, but that means that they're also scary and a live wire in the playoffs. They're the type of team that if you have to play them, you go, oh, crap. They're when Kentucky was an 8 seed in the NCAA tournament a few years ago, and you're like, oh, that sucks because the 1 seed has to play them in the second round. That's who the Heat are. Like the Heat, yeah.
This has been also just like the playoffs so far. Like, I don't know if this happens every year, but like, damn, dude, Kawhi, Embiid.
Injuries. Everybody, dude.
Giannis, Tyler Hero breaking his hand.
Paul George.
This is crazy. Paul George, this is crazy right now. Ja Morant, like it's like you.
Yep.
This is one of those. I know there's injuries every year in the playoffs, but like this feels like round 1 has been extra cruel so far.
We need Bruce Buffer to be calling by knockout because, dude, there has been a lot of them. The Lakers, you gonna fight me if I say I think they got a puncher's chance to come out of the West? That series is 1-1. Resumes tonight also.
That's going to be my little side monitor tonight, dude. I want to see what LeBron does to Dylan Brooks. I mean, that was very disrespectful what Dylan Brooks said. Calling LeBron an old. Who does that, dude? I mean, like, I know that he is a. I know that Dylan is. I know, but nobody says that to LeBron, dude. Like, I don't care. He's old. Dylan Brooks would make a great fighter. I think he'd be great on the mic.
It's kind of like calling your grandpa an old man. Like, yeah, we know he's old, but you can't say that to him. You got to
show respect.
That's your grandpa. That's LeBron frickin' James. Coming up next, we play Matchmaker. You're locked into the BetQL network.